Greetings, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. My name is William, and if you're joining us on the internet and everyone here, please be seated. Glad you made it. Glad you skipped the Super Bowl and came here to get some really super information this evening. We left off, I believe Chris left off on page 14. It's not just about you. But I do want to remind people that are tuning in over the internet, if you go to the top of the Facebook page there, you'll see some downloads for the manuals we're using. We're in the self-control unit of the Peaceful Solution, the third unit in the junior high intermediate series. And there should be a little arrow there that you would click on, and there'll be a drop-down menu, and you can click on that self-control manual so you can follow along with us. And as I indicated, we did leave off on page 14, but we're going to do a quick review. I don't know how quick it'll be, but we'll go ahead and turn back to, first of all, we'll go back to the page 9. Let's start on page 9. That might be a great starting point there. Page 9 in your self-control unit. And Chris went over this pretty thoroughly, and I'm going to add some other ingredients here that, all the teachers can add a little bit. I'm sure if every one of you came up here, you could probably hit on different things that the other teachers possibly didn't hit on. I mean, as far as examples, etc. We all learn from each other, even the teachers. But on page 9, it's talking about, on page 8, it talks about the importance of self-control. And on page 9, at the top, it says, now that you're growing up, it's up to you to take responsibility for keeping yourself in control. You can no longer expect your parents and teachers to remind you of proper behavior. You should now be able to distinguish between right and wrong. You should be able to distinguish between right and wrong. Well, how would you do that? I guess, can you go to the 6th slide? Can you skip to slide 6? I'll make it interesting tonight for the person that's controlling the slides. You see this picture here. How do you know if your thoughts are positive or negative? Ask yourself if they're harmful in any way. Okay? Is that something you just go to the mirror and you ask yourself, is this harmful? And and the mirror answers you back, no, it is not. Or yes, it is. Do not do it. I mean, is that how you ask yourself? Right? Is that how you ask yourself? No, not at all. We're going to learn about that here in a few minutes. We'll go back to the reading here. You should be able to distinguish between right and wrong, and you'll find out how. Chris already mentioned it, but we'll see if you remember what he said. Let's go down to the 3rd paragraph where it says, self-control must come from within you. Now remember, you're not born with self-control. That's why we have a manual, right? Now you're taught self-control, little bits and pieces of self-control as you're growing up from your parents, your teachers, those, that are your authorities in your life. They tell you not to give the example of, don't be running in the house, don't be touching the hot stove, etc. So you were given little bits and pieces of self-control, but you didn't have a manual like the Peaceful Solution has, okay? So you weren't fully trained to develop self-control, and it's not something that was within you at that time because you have to be taught these things, okay? So it has to come from within you and has to be practiced consistently. You must be willing to guide and direct your thoughts, feelings, and actions at all times. There's a key word right there. You have to be willing. You have to be willing. But not only do you have to be willing, you also have to be able. You have to have the ability. We're going to learn about that word tonight, able, being able, because it has to do with power. Okay, you hear that word power. You're going to hear that one a lot tonight too. says you must be willing to guide and direct your thoughts, feelings, and actions at all times. For example, if you're honest one day but dishonest the next, then you're not consistently practicing self-control to maintain the character trait of honesty. Remember, self-control is the foundation of all the other character traits. Honesty, respect, patience, determination, all those character traits that we learned in the character unit, they take self-control to be able to carry these things out, because you have to have the ability to stop, think, weigh out your decision before you proceed, or weigh out your options. So if you're respectful to adults one day while in their presence, but disrespectful when they're not around, then you're not consistently practicing self-control to maintain the character trait of respect. I used to literally bust up in the courtroom, when I was in trouble when I was younger, in my younger years, how the humility of the prisoner when they were standing in front of the judge waiting to get sentenced. Boy, they could put on a great show of humility. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And as soon as they get sentenced, or as soon as they go back to the holding cell, after the sentencing, they're cursing that judge up one downside the other. Right? But they can put on a great show of humility when they need to. So it shows that they can do it, right? But you have to consistently do it. It can't be fake. You have to be doing it all the time. I guess you could say at least they're practicing in some way, right? Consistency and self-control go hand in hand. So self-control is what you do when no one's watching. That's a true test of a person's character is, what do you do when you think no one's watching you? Or, nowadays, I don't think there's any time no one's watching you, Sometimes when I'm on my computer, I notice that Siri or whatever the name of that computer person comes on. I didn't even ask them to. They're listening in to everything going on. They probably got eyes on my computer. I don't know. So there's always someone watching, okay? And here's the key. You know what you did. So you're going to have a conscience, right? You have a conscience, so you're going to have a memory of what you did. So you're either going to feel remorseful, or you're going to be feeling afraid you're going to get caught for what you did when no one was watching, or you're going to have that on your mind, okay? It's going to be something that's with you. So you remember what you did, or you saw what you did. As you will see later on in this unit, people who allow themselves to lose control even once can find themselves in situations they regret for life. Okay, and you can find a lot of those in prisons and many in the graveyard as well. Okay, so on page 10, actually I want to skip page 10. I want to go to page 11, because this is a very key concept in self-control, in developing self-control. And that is to be aware that your actions begin with your thoughts. And being aware is called education. Education makes you aware, okay? Knowledge is awareness. When you're taught things from the peaceful solution, you become aware. I remember, why don't you just ask yourself this question? Were you really thinking about your thoughts you were having on a daily basis before you came to this class? Were you really thinking about the things you think? No, not really. But when the peaceful solution made you aware that your thoughts are important, then you have to be aware of your thoughts, then you started thinking, man, yeah, I guess I never really thought much of my thoughts. Can you go to the first slide that I had on the list there? On page 11 of the acceptance units, and I know Chris mentioned this in the last class, he said, well-informed people are knowledgeable about the world around them. They pay attention to influences around them. And they gather all the facts, then test and prove what is correct before making a decision. Now let me ask you a question. How do you test and prove what is correct? Or what is right? How do you test and prove it? Again, do you go to the mirror and ask the mirror, is this right? Is this wrong? Should I do this? Do you ask yourself? What is our standard for the test of what is right and wrong? Well, it's right here. It's called the peaceful solution. It's what we've learned in the peaceful solution thus far. Your Your actions begin with your thoughts. It's very easy to say, I just did it, I wasn't thinking, but the truth is we're always thinking, you know? And that's another one of those things that I learned in the Peaceful Solution, you know, very early on, that I thought, wow, that's really, I never really thought much of that, you know? Yeah, you're right, I am always thinking. It's silly to say that I stole or I did whatever I did without thinking, because it's true. I'm always thinking, you know, even when I was stealing, I was thinking about, you know, um, the item I was getting ready to steal. I was wondering if anybody was watching. You know, I was wondering, you know, is that a camera up there, or is that just a, you know, I don't know, what is that little round thing up there? It looks like it might be watching me. You know, I mean, I was thinking, but as we learned in the previous units, remember that word impulsive? You know, not thinking about the consequences of our actions, just doing things without thinking it through, and thinking about all the circumstances that are going to be coming our way, the consequences that are going to be coming our way as a result of that decision. No, we don't always think about that. So the truth is we're always thinking, and thoughts enter our minds at the speed of light. Thoughts about ourselves, others, things we need to accomplish, and things we want. These thoughts then lead to feelings, which in turn can lead to behavior. It's no surprise that sad thoughts make you feel sad, right? So if you're watching a sad movie or listening to a sad song and you don't want to feel sad, what do you think you should do? Well, it's called a channel changer, right? Put on another frequency, because that frequency is bringing you down, right? So you probably want to put something else on. Your thoughts are powerful. Your thoughts are powerful, it says. Do not underestimate the effect your thoughts can have on your feelings and your behavior. And remember what we learned early on in the book here about self-control on page 4. You don't have to turn there, but remember what self-control is. Self-control is guiding or directing what you think, because your thoughts lead to feelings. Controlling what you feel, or your emotions, it's another word, because feelings lead to actions or behavior. Controlling how you behave, because decisions lead to actions or behavior, which leads to rewards or consequences. So it's a very simple wheel, you might call it there, or circle. Thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, and actions are leading to rewards or consequences. Back to page 11, where it says your thoughts are powerful. Have you ever really thought about the word power? I know you hear it a lot in this class, and I don't know that we've ever really, you know, given you a dictionary definition or even the etymology of the word power. I'm really into etymology of words, or where words come from, the root of a word. It's very important. And sometimes you can't really get to the, you know, the end root of the word, but you can go farther back than our current way of speaking. You put up that next slide, and we're going to look at this word power. Now, power, and this is from Online Etymology Dictionary, it means ability. Ability. And remember, self-control, you know, is the ability or the power to control the way you think. It starts with your thoughts, the way you feel and the way you act. It's the ability. But the only way to receive that ability or that power is through education or being aware. As I told you a minute ago, it talked about developing self-control. You have to be aware that your actions begin with your thoughts. So you have to have that power or that ability within you, instilled in you through education, to be aware of this. So it says ability, or ability to act or do, strength, vigor, might. And then now notice where they always go with this power, especially in battle. Well, they're not talking about a mental battle, so to speak. Probably they might be thinking about a battle like a war, like fixing to take place in the Ukraine. You know, they're probably thinking of a battle between two armies. But I want you to think of it this way. You're in a battle. I'm in a battle. but we're in a mental battle. Okay? We're in a mental battle with our own thoughts. We're in a mental battle with the influences that are bombarding us constantly. I know David likes to put up that picture, of the boy behind the wall with the influences bombarding him, and it's that wall kind of gives him it's a wall of protection against those influences. But if there's a chink in your armor, so to speak, if there's an opening in their armor, or there's a hole in your wall, those influences can get through very easily. So the only way to keep those fiery darts or those arrows or those negative influences from getting in your brain and staying there, you got to battle against it. We got to constantly battle these things. And how we battle it? Thoughts, if they're negative thoughts, we have to replace them with thoughts from the peaceful solution. That's how we're going to battle the thoughts. And we'll get deeper into that as we go along in the peaceful solution, but it's really just a thought battle going on constantly. If it's a negative thought, you need to replace it. Okay, you need to replace it with a thought that's toward the peaceful solution side. That's why I said when you see that word battle, don't get in your mind war and fighting, blood and guts and death and destruction. Get in your mind a battle, to become the best person that you can become, because there's opposition that's trying to keep us from becoming the best person we can be. There's opposition all the time. And sometimes the opposition is right here. It's in your own mind. So we've got to learn to fight this battle in a peaceful way, using the peaceful solution. So back to the slide. It says, you also see the word control. See the word control? It's after the word efficiency, control, mastery, ability or right to command or control. So it's showing that word control. It's giving you the ability to control your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. It also means legal power or authority. We have the right. Do you understand that we have the right? Actually, in America, you actually have a right, a constitutional right. Isn't the Constitution where it talks about, or is it in the Bill of Rights, about the pursuit of happiness, or the pursuit, you have the right to live in peace, safety, and security in your property, etc. Those are rights that are actually given in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights. There's rights that have been granted to us and passed down to us, certain legal rights. Nobody has the right to come in and take your television set from your house. You have a right to be secure in your possessions. You have that right. But just like we have that right, so do other people. Other people have the right not to have their property molested, not to have their child molested, not to have their family member assaulted, or et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this power, this power, it just means ability, an ability to act or do, and strength and control, to be able. Now, from Wiktionary, the bottom one, it says having or capable of exerting power, potency, or influence. Or influence. Do you realize with what you're learning right now, you're influencing yourself? Okay? Right now, the teacher is influencing you. Okay? I'm influencing you. I'm giving you information that's positively influencing your mind. Okay? Remember, an influence is anything that has the ability to control or to the ability to, what was it? Having a brain freeze. Help me out. Influence. Anything that has the ability to, excuse me? Yeah. Okay. That's what he said. To control, or the ability to influence, or the ability to influence the way we think, feel, or act, right? Okay. All right, so sometimes, thoughts are running out of my mind, in and out of my mind so fast sometimes. I even lose my thoughts sometimes, like I just did. Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping me out. See, but I might have just been testing you. You never know, right? Okay, no, I wasn't, though. I did have a brain freeze. Okay, so uh, having or capable of exerting power, potency, or influence. Okay, so let's go to the next slide because it goes along here in page 11. I found this on the internet, actually. I only added that one word, hopelessness, up there on the feeling, but I want you to notice this. It says, your thoughts are powerful. Do not underestimate the effect your thoughts can have on your feelings and your behavior. And they had this little deal here, and it's this guy sitting here thinking, it's too hard to exercise. Okay, he's having a thought that it's too hard to exercise. He's probably thinking it's too hard to go out running, or it's too hard to do jumping jacks, or whatever it is, to stay in shape. So his thought that he's having led to a feeling. It led to a feeling. Probably a feeling of hopelessness or despair. Like, I don't have any hope that I'm ever going to be able to learn to, get in shape, or I'm never going to be able to get motivated to get in shape. So he probably had a feeling of hopelessness. And we're going to learn about feelings, by the way, in chapter 2 of this unit. And his feelings led to an action. He decided, I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to go take a nap instead of going and trying to work out and, get in shape. The result or the consequence, he says, I'm not getting in shape. And he's probably wondering, why am I not, why am I still weak and my arms are not strengthened and I can't run very well and very long and I don't have much endurance. Well, what did it all begin with? What did it all begin with? The thought, right? His thoughts. His thoughts are self-defeating. He's already telling himself, it's too hard to exercise. It's too hard. And I want to jump ahead. Sometimes we tell ourselves that because we just really don't want to do it yet, We really haven't convinced ourselves yet that we really want to do it. But once we really want to do something, we don't let anything stop us, okay? Okay, so let's go. Well, let me go back to the reading here on page 11. It says, how do you know if your thoughts are positive or negative? Okay, and that's, no. Let's go ahead and, whoever's controlling the slides, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Got a computer there. I want to put a thought in your mind about the human mind and a computer because they're both very similar, okay? They actually say that whoever developed the computer was actually, they had the human brain in mind, a human being in mind. The four main components of a computer are input, process, processing information, storing, and then output, okay? I want you to think about those four main components when it comes to your mind, okay? And we're talking about guarding our mind. We need to be careful in this battle that we're in about what we're allowing to be input into our computer. As we're going to learn tonight, your mind is extremely, extremely powerful. Okay? And it's more powerful than thousands and thousands of computers combined. Okay? They have nothing on your mind. Your mind is extremely powerful. So we got to be careful what we're inputting into it because whatever we put in, it's being processed by our heart and mind, being stored in our memory banks. Remember we learned about the subconscious mind in the first unit, in the character unit? The subconscious mind, there was two parts of your mind, your conscious and your subconscious. Your subconscious stores everything you've ever seen, ever heard, ever smelled, ever tasted, ever touched, ever thought. Even things that you experienced in your mother's womb are within your subconscious mind. Okay? Let's go back to the slide again. I'm just kind of rambling here a little bit, but it's stored in your subconscious and in your heart. But it comes out. It comes out Whatever you store, whatever you put in, it's going to come out in different ways. And sometimes you're not even aware that it's coming out. You're not even aware what influenced you in that situation to make you think or say the way you think, or the thoughts or the things that you're saying. You might not even remember what you saw that influenced you to react that way when somebody said or did something to you. So we've got to really be careful about what we allow into our mind, okay? What we input into our mind, okay? It's very important to be careful. Now, let's go to the next slide. On that same page 11, it says, we have the power to control what thoughts we focus on and what thoughts we let go. We have the power. We have the ability. We have that. Remember that word power. Remember what you learned about it. We have the ability to control. Remember those words were in there. Ability, control, authority. We have the authority. We have the authority right here. This gives you the authority. The peaceful solution gives you the authority to do it. It's telling you what to do. This authority, what this is telling us, it doesn't go against any rules. This is not breaking any rules. Anything in this book is not breaking any moral rules, any morals or rules. It's not breaking anything it's not bringing harm to yourself or anybody else. What's written in this book, where it tells you to do what's right, what's written in this book, it won't bring harm to you or anybody else. So that's proper authority. That's the authority you should listen to. So we have that power to control what thoughts we focus on and what thoughts we let go. And sometimes, you notice sometimes it's almost pleasurable to think negative, sometimes about certain things. Because, you might be thinking about, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about certain people that haven't been trained yet in the peaceful solution. They might be sitting there and thinking how they would love to get even with that person that just said something that they didn't really like. They might be getting a lot of pleasure of thinking about how they would like to do this or that to them, and they might not want to let go of that thought. But we're being trained in the peaceful solution. We should know that if we allow that thought to continue, well, what's it going to lead to? If we don't let it go right away, it's going to lead to feelings. And if we don't cut it off at the feeling, what's it going to lead to? Actions, right? And then if we just go ahead and act any old way we want to act, and we don't use self-control, what can we expect? Consequences, right? Or negative consequences. Because consequences, I think Chris and Catan both, and probably David too, went over, consequences doesn't mean negative. Consequence can be positive or negative. But we use consequences just to distinguish between reward and consequence, so people understand that when you do the wrong thing, when you break the moral rules, you have a consequence. When you do the right thing, you get reward. But we have the power, we have the authority, we have the knowledge. It's been given to us. The power is here. It's been given to us already to show us what's right, what's wrong, what thoughts we should hold on to, what thoughts we should let go of. And I'm going to show you where we got that. Now again, let's go to slide 6. We saw this before. So how do you know if your thoughts are positive or negative? Ask yourself if they're harmful in any way. Now, only you can do this. Only you that have been watching for the last 3 manuals can actually do this, because on the next slide, it gives you the answer of how you distinguish between right and wrong. Can you go to the next slide? On page 9, it says, you should now be able to distinguish between right and wrong. Well, how do you distinguish between right and wrong? Chris told you in the last class. The first 2 books we went through, they tell us what's right and what's wrong, and how to distinguish between what's harmful and what's not harmful. Okay? Now, does that mean you know everything about it yet? No, because we're all still learning, right? But what's the test? What's the test to know if something is right or wrong? Harm. Will it bring harm to myself or somebody else or the environment or property or any living organism? Period. Will it bring harm? And sometimes that takes a lot of education to figure out whether it will or not. It's not always something that's just easily understood. You got to do a lot of research sometimes. There's a lot of things I've found out that were bringing harm to others and myself that took years to understand and learn, okay? But if we follow the rules, that are laid out, the rules that have been laid out in the Peaceful Solution in these first two books, we can pretty much guarantee we're going to avoid all those harmful consequences if we do what we've been taught. So this is how we distinguish between right and wrong. Okay, so let's go now to page 12. I know I'm taking a little bit of time to go over this, what Chris already went over, but I do want to say one other thing about be your own best critic, not your worst. Control the way you think about you. And when Chris was talking in the last class, I was thinking about what he said on the very last paragraph, the second to the last paragraph. It says, self-control is learning to control the way you think about yourself. By examining or critiquing your behavior for the purpose of improving yourself, you're practicing self-control. On the other hand, when you persist in thinking about yourself in a negative way and make no attempt to change your behavior, you're not practicing self-control. You're being your own worst critic. And I was thinking when he was reading that sometimes these thoughts that we have about, I'm never going to improve, I'm never going to be able to overcome this problem, I'm never going to be able to quit smoking, I'm never going to be able to quit drinking, I'm never going to be able to quit doing marijuana, I'm never going to be able to stop slapping my wife, or whatever it is, right? You know why we think that way sometimes? It's comfortable to think that way. You know why? Because we don't want to stop. I would find I'll give you an example. When I was quitting smoking, I would always keep some extra cigarettes in a drawer somewhere just in case, I got the urge, it's kind of like Linus and his security blanket, If they're there, I felt a little comfortable because I knew they were there. But if I threw them in the trash can and they weren't anywhere in the house, I was like, oh, where are they? But if I knew they were in the drawer, I was comfortable, right? And then, after a few hours of not having one, and I'm starting to get like, oh, man, nicotine withdrawals and all that, it's fine, like, oh, man, I think I'm really going to be able to do this, man. Yeah, it's not really going to hurt to have one more. Where's that cigarette? Sometimes we don't want to let it go. We don't want to let those thoughts go. We want to keep thinking. We feel comfortable. We want to justify our negative thoughts that we're having so we can continue to do wrong and feel comfortable in doing wrong. We want to feel comfortable about doing wrong. I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to do that. But the fact is, once you make up your mind, you're not going to have that same thought. Those thoughts aren't going to be going through in your mind anymore. You're going to be having different thoughts. You're going to say, I can do this, okay? I can do this, and you're not going to let anything stop you, okay? But it's all about making up your mind. But he also mentioned the word critic, be your own best critic, not your worst. And there's nothing wrong with criticizing yourself. There's nothing wrong with criticizing others. As long as Chris indicated, if you're going to criticize something, make sure that you give them the solution. If you're going to, let me give you the definition of critic. Go to the next slide, because when we think of critic, we usually think of these two guys. I don't know if they're still around, but when I was growing up, Siskel and Ebert, they were movie critics. They gave the 2 thumbs up or the thumbs down and the thumbs up or whatever. Well, a critic is a person who forms and expresses judgments of the merits, faults, value, or truth of a matter. That's what a critic is. Okay, well, don't we have to decide in the Peaceful Solution? Don't we have to decide whether our actions are positive or negative? That means you're making a judgment. You're having to decide. A decision is a judgment. So you're having to decide whether or not to do something or not to do something, whether to have a certain thought or whether to let it go. You're constantly making judgments. So you are a critic. Now, if you sit there, as it says here, and you critique your behavior for the purpose of improving yourself, and you sit there and think, I really shouldn't have done it that way. That was really a dumb way of doing it, or that was really a silly thing that I did. I really shouldn't have done that. And you think of how you could have done it better, and you set your mind to think, next time, here's how I'm going to improve myself. Here's how I'm going to do next time to try to avoid that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with criticizing yourself. As long as, right, you're doing it for the sake of improving yourself. Or if you're going to criticize someone else, make sure that if you form a judgment on the merits, faults, value, or truth of something, make sure that you have a solution for the person too. Show them, don't just tell them what they did wrong, show them how to do the right thing, right? Educate them on how to do what's right. So it says that it's comfortable, okay? It's sometimes comfortable. And I'm going to give you another example. When I was in my 20 years of in and out of the prison system, it was comfortable. When I went to jail, it wasn't uncomfortable. I knew everybody. I grew up with them. It was kind of like old home week. It was like a family reunion. Hey, I haven't seen you in a couple years, man. Last time me and you did time together in this place over here. I mean, we all grew up in juvenile detention, and we graduated to the big house. So I pretty much knew everybody, and everybody was real familiar. They had coffee all day long, the coffee pot where you could drink coffee all day. They gave us free cigarettes. I mean, if you didn't have cigarettes and you were indigent, you didn't have any money on your account, they actually came to they would roll a cart around full of tobacco, rolling tobacco, and they would give it out free every night. So it was kind of like, well, this is kind of comfortable. I got my cigarettes, I got my coffee, I got all my friends, right? So it wasn't, too uncomfortable. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't just leave when I wanted to, but I was somewhat comfortable in that situation because it was very familiar to me. Well, sometimes our thoughts become like that. We get in this prison of these thoughts we're having, these negative thoughts, and we feel comfortable with them. We feel comfortable because it makes us feel better when we think about how we'd like to wring that person's neck, right? Or imagining ourselves wringing that person's neck for what they did to us, right? We feel comfortable with it. We become institutionalized, so to speak. It feels comfortable, more like a family reunion than imprisonment. And that's the best way I can describe it. Nobody likes to be locked up, but some guys get institutionalized. They feel comfortable in that situation because they got free rent. They know they're going to get 3 hot meals, right? They got dental taken care of. They got their medical taken care of. They got guards. They got bodyguards. They're called correctional officers. They got guards. People in the world have to pay. People on the street have to pay for protection. In jail, you got them all around you. Now, am I telling you to go to jail so you can feel comfortable? No, I'm not trying to encourage you to get in trouble and go to jail. I'm just telling you, sometimes people feel comfortable in that situation. Okay, on page 13, it says you wouldn't consider someone a friend who put you down and called you names, so don't do it to yourself. Okay, so let's go now back to page, I want to go back to look at LP1F. LP1F, and we're going to look at procedure number 5 because Chris already read it, but I will remind you. It says, have students read, be your own best critic, not your worst, and it's not just about you, control the way you think about others, which we're fixing to read, found on pages 12 and 14. Explain to students that negative thoughts can lead to poor choices and a lack of respect for themselves and others. Encourage students to keep their minds functioning at an optimal level by focusing on thoughts that can build a positive character. And as I told you, to focus on the thoughts that you're getting from the peaceful solution, you can't go wrong. Turn to page 14. I gave you the meaning of power. It's not just about you. Control the way you think about others. Having negative thoughts about others can be just as dangerous as having negative thoughts about yourself. Negative thoughts about others come from a variety of sources. Sometimes people do things that get under our skin. They can frustrate us because we perceive their actions as unfair or mean. That frustrate, that's a feeling. Okay, that's a feeling. Sometimes we have feelings. Okay? Sometimes, remember, these thoughts, about others come as a result of things that people say or do to us that we perceive a certain way. And sometimes, as we're going to learn later on, people don't really mean to anything harmful toward you when they say it, but you might perceive it that way. Thoughts like, he's so stupid, or I hate her, or she's such a jerk, are only some examples of negative thoughts about others. Without self-control, thoughts like these have the potential to lead to violent behavior because they desensitize you to the fact that all people, even the ones who annoy you, are to be respected. Yeah, they're to be respected. They're to be shown that care and concern, right, that everyone deserves. That word desensitized, if you look at page 231 in your glossary, the word desensitize, it means to lose the ability to be caring and concerned for the safety and well-being of someone else. So it can desensitize you to the fact that all people, even the ones who annoy you, should be treated with the same care and concern you want to be treated with. But sometimes the way we think can desensitize us to lose the ability to be caring and concerned for the safety and well-being of someone else. That's what desensitization means. Negative thoughts that lead to physical or verbal abuse do not show care and concern, neither do they solve conflicts. In fact, they will only create bigger problems. It is up to you to control your thoughts about others so that you can interact with compassion and empathy. Remember, compassion, caring about the needs of others. We learned that in the character unit. And empathy. Empathy, remember, is the ability to put ourselves in the place of someone else. I don't like to say put yourself in someone else's shoes because you could get, what's that stuff called? Some kind of fungus on your feet from somebody else's shoes. But, putting yourself in someone else's place and imagining yourself being in their position, right? This means to have care and concern regarding another's physical, mental, and emotional well-being. It takes a lot of self-control to direct your thoughts away from how someone's treating you and focus instead on what you can do to solve your differences, but it can be done, okay? It can be done if we focus, if we put our focus on the peaceful solution, the things that we've been learning in the peaceful solution, and how to solve problems, the problem-solving abilities that we've been given in the first two books. It says, there will be an entire chapter on how to positively resolve conflicts so that they do not result in violence and aggression. In chapter 3, we're going to learn about those things, about conflict resolution and what we can do. We're going to learn a lot about there's a whole chapter devoted to anger and how to control your anger, which is a really big one with a lot of people. There's many emotions, but anger is one emotion that's very misunderstood, and you're going to understand it perfectly by the time this book, by the time we've gone through that. And you're going to be very shocked to learn about a lot of the things that you learn about the emotion of anger. But we're going to learn how to resolve conflicts so they don't result in violence and aggression. But for now, remember that aggressive behavior stems from negative thoughts. And it's up to us to control how we think about others. It's up to us. It's up to us to control how we think about others. We can't lose sight of the fact that they're a human being and they deserve respect, no matter how they're treating us. And I know that's hard at times because when you're in the middle of a situation, and your thoughts are racing and you're your emotions are all over the place. You might feel embarrassed about how someone's treating you. You might feel very frustrated by the way they're treating you, or whatever it is, whatever emotion you're feeling. But that's where self-control comes in. We've really got to stop. And as we're going to learn in the next chapter, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we really got to learn to stop and allow those emotions to cool down so we can think clearly and rationally about the situation and about the person in front of us that's treating us that way. There's some people that can do that, and I've watched people that are being mistreated by other people handle it very calm, cool, collected, and they don't show any disrespect to the other person. I've seen people do it. So I know it's possible to do. The other reason I know it's possible to do is this book is telling us it's possible. It gives us the authority to do it. It tells us this is what we should do. It gives us the ability because it educates us on how to do it. So therefore, we have the power. We have the power to choose to think of that person as a person who's worthy of respect, regardless of how they're speaking to us at that time or how they're treating us. We have that power to do that. We just have to exercise it. We have to exercise that authority that we have. So at the bottom it says, have thoughts about others that you would be willing to share openly. In other words, if they could peer into your mind and they could read your thoughts about that person, make sure that the thoughts you're having about that person are respectful, caring, compassionate, merciful, patient, etc. We don't want to be thinking any kind of ill will or harm towards somebody, okay, is what it's telling us. Okay, now let's see. All right, let's continue. Let's look on page 15. Think about it. Because your mind is your most powerful tool, the one needed for all tasks, it must be properly cared for if it is to function at its best. There's that word power again, right? Can you go to the next slide? I just want to give you a visual. Now think about this. You really think about your mind as a tool? I used to tell people in the Come to Peaceful Solution class that, think about it and keep that visual up while I'm talking. I'd rather them look at that than look at me. You can look at me. I'm just saying, look at the slide. Think about this for a minute. Let's say you're a mechanic. Does a mechanic use tools? Yes, they use tools. They have tools. And mechanics are very, very, very picky about their tools, okay? I'm looking at a mechanic right now. I know personally know a mechanic right now. But he takes care of his tools. Mechanics, you know why mechanics take care of their tools? Because if their tool cannot be found or it's not working properly, they're losing time, okay? And when you're trying to fix something, time is precious. Time's precious to all of us. And when you can't find the tool that you need to do the job, it's very frustrating, okay? And I've seen not this person I'm thinking of that I'm looking at right now that I know is a mechanic, but I've seen other mechanics get very, very, very upset when they didn't find a tool, someone didn't put a tool back in their toolbox when they were done, and they start cursing and yelling and screaming, or if something's not working right, the wrench got stuck or something, they're like just flipping out, and they're very, very upset because that tool was not there or it's not working properly. Now, that same mechanic goes home at night, not the one I'm looking at right now, other mechanics I've known. I'm sure there's a lot of mechanics that do this. And they put a line of Coke on the table, some cocaine on the table, and they're like, oh, yeah. And the very tool, the very tool that they've been given that enables them and gives them the power to pick up a tool, right? To put a tool in their hand and to actually know how it functions. The very tool that gives them the ability to use that tool properly, they mess it all up. And they think nothing of it. But boy, they sure care about those other tools, those craftsman tools, you know, don't mess with those. But this tool, well, they put alcohol and drugs and other things that are harmful into their bodies that affect their tool, their most powerful tool, and they think nothing of it. You know why they think nothing of it? They haven't been told yet. They haven't been educated like we're being educated, right? They're not aware. They're not even thinking of their mind as a tool. They're not thinking of their mind as anything at that point. They're just thinking of doing the drugs. They're not aware that the mind is powerful, and they're not even considering and being thankful that they have a mind that they can use, right? That gives them the ability to use the tools so they can make their money and get paid and pay their rent, etc., right? Pay their families' bills, etc. But think about it. Your mind is a powerful tool. It has to be properly cared for to function at its best. It's got to be, we got to guard our mind. Remember, we got to guard it not just against negative thoughts. We got to guard it against putting anything in our bodies that can affect our mind. Because just like the computer, remember the computer input? Remember the input process? Remember those 4 things about the computer? Well, guess what? Whatever we put in, computers get bugs, right? Have you ever had a bug in your computer? Where your computer started acting up? Well, your brain does the same thing. You put the wrong thing in your mainframe, it goes to your brain, and you start having glitches. There's glitches. I've had glitches. I had a glitch a minute ago. Remember, I was sitting here talking to you, and I'm like, wait a minute. What was the definition of influence? Anything that has the ability to affect the way I think, feel, and act. I couldn't remember the word affect. I couldn't remember it. I'm sitting there thinking, what was the word? Anything that has the ability to influence the way I think? No, influence is. You see, I sat there and I'm like, I had a glitch. Why did I have a glitch? I don't know. Probably the same reason I had a glitch before when I was looking for my car keys one day and I couldn't find them anywhere, and I'm looking everywhere, and I looked under the sofa, under the bed, everywhere. And finally, the only place I didn't look, I'm thinking, no way, man, there's no way. Open the freezer, there they are. Right? It's called a glitch. Now, how did I get that glitch? Well, I did some things back when I was younger, like acid and things like that, where sometimes I get a glitch. My brain misfires. It doesn't function properly. Even to this day, I have consequences for my actions way before. Okay? All of us do. We can't think we got away with it, right? We're still going to have to suffer the consequences of our behavior that we've done before we started learning the peaceful solution. So think of it like this, it says. Your job is to build a house, but your saw is useless because it's been left out in the rain. Having rusted, it is now too dull to cut the wood. Have you ever had that? You had a dull blade, or a dull saw, and you were trying to cut something, and it was all jaggedy, and, just didn't come out right, and it took you, an hour to get through a 2x4, and by the time you got through it, it looked like, you took an axe and just broke it or something. That's what a rusty saw will do. I have a picture here of a rusty saw and a rusty brain. Can you show the next slide? You see that? There's the rusty saw and there's the negative brain. They actually have them. I found that on the internet. That's a rusty brain. Might belong to a guy named Rusty. I don't know. Just sometimes you can laugh. You know what I'm saying? It's okay. Sometimes I think we should put an applaud light out there, so you know when to laugh or when to clap or. But rusty saw and negative brain it's a syndrome. You know what I'm saying? That's what this is showing us. Leave that slide up while I talk about this rusty brain here. It says, having rusted, it's now too dull to cut the wood. Negative thoughts have the potential to affect your mind in much the same way rain can corrode metal. Negative thoughts wear away your ability, your power. They wear away your power. They put a chink in your armor. Now, guess what? The influence can get through. Like David shows with the boy in the wall and the influence is trying to bombard him. Well, guess what? Now there's a brick missing out of the wall and the arrow gets through. The influence gets through and it gets to you. And now, instead of being confident and being calm, cool, and collected, you allowed that influence to get in and now you're all upset. And you've lost your control. You've lost your power. You've lost your ability because you didn't guard your mind. You allowed the negative thoughts to come in. Somebody told me one time, you can put the slide down now. Somebody told me one time that it was a student of mine. He said negative thoughts. He said, isn't it kind of like this? He says, negative thoughts are kind of like little, you ever seen those animations where it showed these little black birds flying over someone's head, right? Like somebody got hit in the head and there's little birds flying over it, right? And he said it's kind of like having these little birds fly around your head, the negative thoughts. And he said it was like you can't keep the birds from landing on your head, right? The negative thoughts, he was comparing the birds to the negative thoughts. He says you can't keep the birds from landing on your head, but you can keep them from making a nest, right? In other words, negative thoughts are going to come. You're going to have negative thoughts, but you don't have to allow them to live in your mind. You don't have to let them stay there. As soon as they enter the corridor there, you need to tell them, get out of here. You're not welcome here. Don't let them stay. Don't let them spend the night. Don't let them stay the night overnight. Especially, make sure you get rid of the negative thought. Don't hold it. Don't be holding these negative thoughts, these grudges. They turn into grudges, right? So we're going to learn about that in the next couple chapters. But it says, negative thoughts wear away our ability to make choices that are moral. So we no longer have the power to make the right choice. To make choices that are moral and respectful to yourself and others. Okay, so we need to think about that. We don't want to allow these negative thoughts to just harbor themselves in our brains. Because if we do, we're allowing ourselves to lose our power, to our ability to make moral, proper decisions. And we're not going to be looking at that person that we're dealing with as a person that deserves respect, honor, etc. as a human being. We're going to be looking at them in a negative way, and we're going to be, probably thinking some very negative things about them. We might do some negative. We might, if we continue, take action that's very negative. So remember, think about these things. Your mind is powerful. It's a very powerful tool, and we need it for everything we do. What is it that you do that you don't use your mind? Can you think of one thing? You need our minds for everything. We need it in every situation. Your mind is so powerful, you're on autopilot right now. You're not even aware of the fact that your heart's beating, your lungs are working, your kidneys are functioning, your liver, all the trillions of cells in your body are operating right now, and you're not even telling them to. You're just sitting here listening to me thinking, when's this class getting over? Oh, I've got 2 minutes left. Right? See, I told you, I knew what you were thinking. I knew it. Okay, you laughed, so I knew. Okay, all right. It's okay to laugh, you guys. It's okay to laugh. But be thinking about these things between now and the next class we're having is, let's see, today is the 13th, so the next one to be the 16th? Yeah. So the next class, we're going to be picking up on page 15. I didn't have my glasses. 15 on the middle of the page, straight talk. And it'll be on 2/16 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope everybody joins us. But be aware of your thoughts. If they're negative thoughts, practice between now and the next class, getting rid of those thoughts. Start replacing them with some positive thoughts. And remember, be your own best critic, not your worst. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time.